Good afternoon. Welcome to But What Does It All Mean? A GCP Equity and Inclusion webinar series devoted to translating research studies and data into meaningful action. My name is Joanna Brown, Director of Equity and Inclusion Programs at GCP, or Greater Cleveland Partnership, in our Equity and Inclusion Division. I will be your host for today. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to go over a few housekeeping items. Our team is looking at consumer feedback versus the usual business-to-business feedback regarding what influences your spending decisions when considering products or services. When you take this really quick survey, you are influencing the future path of a GCP offering. We are putting the link in the chat for you. Thank you in advance. We want to make sure today's presentation is extremely valuable for you. So we ask that you submit all questions by clicking on the question button in the control panel and typing in your questions. This session will also be recorded. You will receive a link to the recording follow-up survey within 24 hours. Today, we will learn more about Project Noir, an applied research project focused on collecting and summarizing the experiences of Black women in Cleveland. This research project is being led by Bethany Studenic, Managing Director and Co-Founder, and ChiChi Nkemere, Director of Strategy and Co-Founder of Enlightened Solutions. Bethany holds her bachelor's in social work, her master's in social administration, and she also has a Juris Doctorate. Bethany has over 10 years in community change experience, heading up highly visible social and research-based movements. In addition, Bethany has worked with a variety of diverse populations through direct experience. Bethany is an accomplished fundraiser, government relations professional, community strategist, researcher, and policy analysis expert. ChiChi is a strategic thinker. She has over 10 years experience in community engagement and advocacy. ChiChi holds a bachelor's in political science and African American studies from The Ohio State University, and immediately moved to Houston to serve as a Teach for America educator. As a public safety and workplace advocate, she is dedicated to progressive and transformative community development. Bethany and ChiChi will share a brief presentation followed by question and answers as we delve into Project Noir. And now I will turn it over to Bethany and ChiChi.
Hello, everyone. We're very excited to be here. I'm going to go ahead and introduce ourselves, and then we'll kind of dive into a bit more of the depth of what we're working on. Today, we're really talking about our work in Project Noir, which is our research arm of what we do. First, I'd like to start by introducing ourselves and introducing Enlightened Solutions, and then we'll start delving into Project Noir and the specifics there. So we're thinking we're going to start with Enlightened Solutions, we'll go into Project Noir, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the preliminary findings we're coming out of Project Noir right now. We're in the data analysis phase of this research project, so you're getting kind of a sneak peek into some of the top level statistics and information and trends that we're seeing in our research project so far. Again, this is me. I'm a social worker, and I have my Juris Doctor as well, so I have a legal and counseling background, giving me kind of a unique perspective in terms of research and the way in which we interview people and structure the way in which we organize and complete advocacy work as an organization. I'm the co-founder of Enlightened Solutions. I have a background both in direct practice with at-risk populations, including survivors of domestic violence, individuals with mental and physical limitations, at-risk youth, and many other organizations and populations that I've worked with over the years. I've also been a fundraiser and a lobbyist. I've done more of the advocacy arm of nonprofit and civic work. And I actually met ChiChi while we were both doing police reform at the city of Cleveland around the Department of Justice and the consent decree. And from there, we really forged a bond and realized how fantastic we are working together as a team. And so we co-founded Enlightened Solutions. And I'm going to turn it over to ChiChi to introduce herself and talk a little bit about what we do.
Awesome. So I'm ChiChi Nkemere. I'm a co-founder of Enlightened Solutions. And on the day-to-day, I deal with strategy and making sure that we're pushing forward and remaining really rooted in community work and community advocacy within our firm. I love the fact that Joanna said the Ohio State University. I'm very proud of where I came from and what I ended up being able to accomplish at school. I immediately left and went to go teach English and history in Houston, Texas for about 5 years, and came back up here and worked between the Euclid City Schools and CMSD as an intervention specialist for young children, where I really honed that skill, making sure that children in Cleveland were able to be wrapped around with either services or reading intervention or any kind of intervention that would allow them to be successful in school. I really do enjoy the work that I do around police reform. I have continued that work here in Cleveland and utilize those skills to make sure that we are being innovative with difficult conversations. And one of the most difficult conversations we keep seeing here, especially in Cleveland, is what we're going to do about Cleveland being ranked one of the worst city in America for Black women. A little bit about that later as we go into what we do with Enlightened Solutions.
So Enlightened Solutions, we founded in 2018 as a workplace advocacy organization. What that really means is we found that in our own careers and with individuals who shared intersections like ours, we faced a lot of frustrations in our careers here in Cleveland. There was stagnation, there were glass ceilings, there were frustrations, and sometimes it felt like no matter what we did, we just were spinning our wheels and not really making progress. And so when we founded Enlightened Solutions, we were really looking to found a place for individuals who were struggling inside of systems that really have not been designed to consider them or their needs or their uniqueness. We really started thinking about individuals, so we're kind of a very grassroots advocacy-based organization in that way. From there, we branched out into research, which is what we'll be talking about today. And our research really focuses right now on the experiences of Black women in Cleveland, although we do research around many different types of intersections. We are a radically inclusive organization. What that means is we really think about inclusion in terms of every way in which humans are diverse, and every way in which we diverge from what's defined as the norms, and how that interacts as those identities layer on top of one another. So we really do think that it's important to situate our inclusion work in a way that is including everyone with every identity that they could possibly have. We also do organizational work. So we work with organizations to assess and implement diversity and inclusion plans and trainings and evaluations and procedures. We've been successful with this work. We really enjoy it. We work with organizations that are really interested in what are the next steps of diversity and inclusion, and how do we start really fostering an inclusive work environment that situates us for this changing market that we see ourselves in right now.
So about Project Noir. This is a research project that was really born out of an article that came that was published in City Lab Bloomberg earlier this year. The article was called What Livability Looks Like for Black Women. And through that research, we learned that Cleveland was ranked the worst city for Black women completely underneath 3 different metrics, underneath education, economics, and healthcare. And as you can see on the chart to the right, we are all the way at the bottom. We are completely lacking in areas that actually support Black women, even though Black women have been integrated superficially throughout the ranks here in this city. We know that Cleveland is a majority Black city. We know that Black women are integrated in healthcare systems, in the workplace, and within education, yet and still, what is causing this kind of stagnation? What is causing this kind of constriction of the workforce? And also, what can Cleveland do? How brilliant would this city be if Black women were able to flourish in the way that other individuals are able to flourish within this city? So, next. We're taking that next step through research. Much of diversity and inclusion work has really focused on, is there actually a problem? We see articles like this all the time in the news, like, oh, did you know that Black women are not able to rise through the ranks within their organization? We are not here to prove the existence of a problem. We know there's a problem already. What we are here to do is to create tangible solutions to actually solve those problems at the root, and also amplify the voices of the individuals that are the most marginalized within those systems. What ends up happening is that Black women, or more marginalized people in general, are not being listened to. Their experiences are not actually being heard, and they're not being amplified within these organizations or within these systems. So now that we see that there is a problem, now that we understand that the problem is real, what does that problem look like from the perspective of these diverse individuals? Are we listening to them? Are we treating them as subject matter experts? Or are we just saying, oh no, poor you, let's move forward? Lastly, what are these recurring systemic pain points that we like to point out that continue to bottleneck the progress of diverse individuals? Traditional diversity and inclusion research includes, the pay gap between genders. Are Black women going to have worse outcomes in comparison to other women? Are Black and white children receiving equal education? Obviously a passion point of mine. What we like to do with Enlightened Solutions research is to make sure that these common challenges are places where Black women are able to receive resources, support, networking opportunities, and an opportunity to actually process the issues that they have gone through within the workplace. What are these kinds of patterns? What are things that Black women should be looking for or looking out for within these systems? How can they better protect themselves? And what are the most effective methods to combat these biases? We are here to just support marginalized individuals and make sure that these resources are readily available, and that these systems are able to actually listen, again, to the subject matter expertise of marginalized individuals.
Right, and in order to do that, to take our research in a different direction, and to really think about identifying patterns and challenges on the ground, we decided to adopt a research model rooted in phenomenological research principles. And essentially what that means is we're really looking at the lived experiences of those we are working to serve. We hold individuals who live at particular intersections as the experts in their experience. There's no one better situated to tell us about the challenges which they have faced as the people who have been facing them all of their lives. And so we really wanted to formulate a research study utilizing principles of putting experts in the driver's seat to help us generate those solutions. Essentially what we're doing is mining stories and then putting potential solutions along with those. And we're looking at identifying those major challenges between groups. And what's really useful about this as well is that there's internal reliability built in, because what we're really looking for are, as people are sharing their stories, they are sharing them independently of one another. They're going through our survey, they're talking to us individually, and they're sharing what their life experience has been. Whenever we start to identify, hey, 10, 15, 20 people with the same life experience and the same intersections have identified this problem, we know that it's a real problem because it's coming from so many different people who come from all over our city, all over Northeast Ohio, and are sharing and communicating similar challenges that we continue to see in our institutions around education, workplaces, and healthcare. For example, this is an actual story from Project Noir. This is a quote. "A specific person consistently referred to me as angry and aggressive. This same person was responsible for my performance reviews. I had lower reviews than my coworkers, and they didn't have a good reason why." That's concerning. You know, pay is tied to performance reviews. Ability to advance is tied to performance reviews. And while this is kind of more of a formal type of problem than sometimes we see more informal issues, there are solutions that we can pair with this. Training on microaggressions, training on implicit bias that is consistent and reinforced, training on coded language and proper history, understanding what the struggles might be. Referring to a Black woman as angry or aggressive is absolutely coded language. It is coded based on the historical context that we can bring to light for certain individuals. We also do qualitative review of performance reviews. So we run things like natural language processing. We run them through AI, and we take a look at how are we talking about different groups. For some individuals or some clients, we'll find that as we run performance review data, we may have scores at about the same for, say, men and women. But whenever we run qualitative language processing, we might find that the way in which we talk about women and the way in which we talk about men is very different. We found for certain organizations that a lot of words associated with the male performance reviews will be things like leader, thought leader, accomplish, visionary, things like that, where we see a lot of the language for women being tied to support, assist, evaluate, communicate, things like that. And so we see that like there can be gendered language inside of performance reviews, whereas if we're just looking at quantitative pieces, we might not be able to see those patterns. So we really do rely on both qualitative and quantitative components, and we utilize that both in work with organizations, but also inside of our research to think about how do we speak. What are we focusing on whenever we're talking about particular groups? And then we formulate solutions coming from there.
So community, how are we going to actually maximize the impact of the information that we have learned, the research that we have gleaned from a survey like Project Noir, or any kind of survey that actually listens, again, to the lived experiences of marginalized individuals? The first way that we decided to maximize impact was partnering with influencers. As you know, we are in the throes of COVID-19. What we did not want to do as an organization that really centers individuals that are the most marginalized is to put a whole bunch of people in the same room. We know that, especially for this particular project, Black women are on the front line of the front line in this battle against COVID-19, whether it is individuals that are frontline workers or individuals that are not necessarily seen as frontline workers, like receptionists, secretaries in medical buildings, grocery workers, individuals that are within the gig economy. We wanted to make sure that people that are not in our traditional networks were able to take the survey and able to get their ideas out there. So through that, we partnered with social media influencers. One, Courtney Covers Cleveland, another one was Lemon Love Lifestyle, who helped us to really broaden our reach and broaden our audience, so that different types of women at all different intersections and all different socioeconomic branches were able to take our survey. Next, we really based our outreach strategy in lived experience. It was all about Black women and femmes, and at whatever intersection they are, at whatever stage in life they are, really learning from their lived experiences. So we also allowed Black women that did not necessarily have the time to dedicate 15 to 20 minutes to take that survey. We allowed them to have personal one-on-one interviews with Bethany and I, and we're still conducting these interviews where it was an informal conversation where we were able to just chat about these systems, about their experiences in a way that was not only confidential, but allowed Black women to have the opportunity to follow up with us if any of these issues were particularly traumatic, or any of these issues brought about things that they wanted to speak about more. Lastly, we utilize this as an opportunity to organize as an organization. As two millennial women that created this firm, we are really keenly aware of the importance of being flexible. Flexibility is key, and making sure that you can fine tune as you are moving forward is key, and it is a sustainability marker for organizations. And one of the things that we really stress for any kind of nonprofit or organization that we worked with. Next, trauma-informed care is at the root of everything that we do. We're really blessed in Enlightened Solutions to have Bethany as a social worker trained in trauma-informed care to really root our work in making sure that we are not re-traumatizing individuals. One thing that we learn about, especially workplace issues, is that no one really has a place to process this, other than, you know, maybe going to happy hour with your friends or maybe chatting with a parent or a mentor. A lot of the advice that we're getting is to change your own internal behavior. So if your boss is particularly angry, you step out of the way. If you have a coworker that is particularly nitpicky, you are no longer allowed to be in meetings with them. But what happens with that is that you are modifying behavior that isn't necessarily your particular fault, especially if they're rooted in biases or coded language, or in general, just individuals that aren't used to working with diverse populations. So with trauma-informed care, we're really making sure that individuals know that, again, it is not your fault, but we are giving you all resources to make sure that this kind of behavior gets shifted within the workplace or shifted within education or healthcare systems. We end up guiding these conversations to make sure that individuals feel safe and cared for. And again, like I said before, we offer follow-up support resources, counseling, networking, to make sure that individuals, again, especially the most marginalized individuals, are supported throughout this process.
Absolutely. And one thing that we found very helpful in the development of our online survey was running a pilot survey. And we'll talk about this briefly. What we really were doing was piloting several different methods of getting feedback on sensitive issues. So we really asked questions in different ways, and then we purchased feedback from across the country from Black women. And what we really found was that this was very useful for trying out different question formats. We also found that the responses helped us by purchasing them nationwide. We didn't create confusion by soliciting pilot responses and then also additional responses inside the community. So going national in that way was very helpful. It also allowed us to generate some preliminary insights and really streamline our questions. What we really found was that there's a hesitancy among this population and many populations to identify as a quote unquote victim. People are really hesitant to acknowledge that what they have potentially went through is something that rises to the level of victimization. However, we do see that individuals who experience difficulties at work or in healthcare or in education often have feelings that are somewhat associated with PTSD or trauma-like syndrome after the fact. So we're really, really careful about how we word things and how we talk about things. We also sourced experiences to integrate into the main survey. This helped us flesh out some of our questions to give people more options, to get them thinking about their own experiences, and kind of drill down into exactly what we wanted to be asking. It also increased our understanding of participants. We asked a lot of open-ended questions, and so by reading through those and analyzing those with natural language processing, we really got to know who we were talking to and what kinds of critiques they might have, what kind of questions they might see, and that really led us to designing a tool in the end that felt really fluid. A lot of the feedback that we got from survey participants was that they were really excited about the final survey. They felt that it really reflected and helped them share their experiences because it was prompting them in a way that got them thinking. So that was a very, very helpful component of the survey design process.
So in the workplace, just taking one piece of from the research that we've gotten from that Bloomberg article, is that 77% of Black women were subjected to inappropriate comments about their features, including their hair, their face, their dress. Again, as we know, this is extremely coded language, and more than that, it is misogynistic, but even deeper than that, it's misogynoir. Noir. It is the intersection between the hatred of Blackness and the hatred of women. And that is a serious intersection that Black women inhabit, and a very, very thin line that Black women consistently have to tread within the workplace. Our hair is policed, our bodies are policed, the way that we speak is policed. And again, this ends up negatively impacting Black women with, again, pay, with performance reviews, with in general camaraderie within your workplace. Next, 81% of Black women had been subjected to comments or debates about racism or sexism or other issues. As you know, current events is it's shot directly to our phones. So anytime any kind of current event comes up, sometimes coworkers want to chat about it. But what happens when those kinds of, quote, casual conversations become debates about your own humanity? Again, it further demoralizes and further flattens the experiences of Black women to be something that they can be debated, which again is not only negative, but absolutely inappropriate in the workplace. Next, 54% of Black women have been retaliated against when they objected to those kinds of inappropriate comments. And I'm always reminded of the Zora Neale Hurston quote, which says, if you're silent about your pain, they will kill you and claim that you liked it. If you speak up about issues that you do not like, you are seen as overly aggressive or not a team player. If you are quiet about these abuses, these microaggressions, then they're okay. Again, you are placing women, Black women and femmes, between a rock and a hard place. And once you start adding more intersections, whether you're lesbian or gay or trans, or you're an immigrant, or you're an individual that is from a lower socioeconomic standpoint, these kinds of marginalizations end up compounding on your employees and compounding in the workplace. And it makes for a really negative HR system failure. Respondents, we've learned throughout our research, were more likely to be disciplined or fired even than the individuals that they have reported. Now let that sink in. That means you are going to the HR system, pleading with them to state, hi, I have been marginalized, I have been the victim of poor workplace environment, and you are in turn disciplined for raising these kinds of concerns. We need to become a little bit more responsive and responsible within our HR systems to make sure that we are not pushing the talent, brilliance outside just because we are trying to make sure that those individuals' voices are not heard when they're being harassed or abused. Only 2 respondents saw that their harasser here in Cleveland were fired. Only 2. 6 respondents, 2% of the individuals, the respondents that we received, were actually fired after making that kind of complaint, while an additional 12 were fired for other reasons. So we're seeing that Black women, femmes, are being exited out of the workplace. And it's no wonder that this city is experiencing this kind of brain drain when you're being demoralized within the workplace.
Right, and just a couple of stories to illustrate what we're talking about and the power of storytelling in illustrating these particular issues. And something I want to stress here is that a lot of what we're talking about might be termed as microaggressions. And really what we're talking about is the direct interplay of bias at work and in organizations in general. And we'll talk a little bit about healthcare and education as well. But thinking about workplaces, one thing we really hear from Black women is that the truth is that it's a death by 1,000 cuts. There's no one particular instance, there's no one particular thing that we can target and say, if we fix this, we're going to be able to do so much more for Black women. There are definitely low-hanging fruit that we could start working with, but really thinking about what Black women go through in the workplace, we have to understand that a lot of it really is those aggressions that just take place in the workplace, that just come out as we are interacting with systems and with individuals. So this one here in the middle, I'm perceived as not being knowledgeable as my coworkers due to my color. My supervisor purposely communicates incomplete information to me. She does not want me to be considered knowledgeable or an expert when managing projects. She has sidebar, in-depth conversations with my counterpart to provide her with information so she appears knowledgeable to be the knowledgeable expert. Now, something I want to cover here is sometimes when we talk about and we tell these stories, we have people at other intersections saying, you know, I experienced the same thing. I'm a white woman. I've experienced things like this. But what we are saying here is that the statistics indicate that Black women are falling behind at a faster rate than other intersections, at other identities. And what we really see is that these type of aggressions that can't necessarily be coded one way or another, we know that they're happening at a much higher rate for Black women. So when we look at things like this intentional exclusion, this undermining of someone's expertise and ability, and we know that that person inhabits particular intersections, we know that they are more at risk for behavior like this. And behavior like this over the long term undermines careers to the point of extreme differences at the end of a career. We also have when a new director was hired, he met with others in my position to hear about their professional goals, but not me. He consistently scheduled times he knew I wasn't available. Again, I can't come in and say, hey, this is happening just based on race. But what I can say is, this is happening at a higher rate for Black women. No one should be subjected to these types of mismanagement strategies, purposeful or not. But whenever we see that it is happening and it is used as a weapon against people at particular intersections, we have to understand that bad management is not only bad management, it's also malicious in certain circumstances. And we need to start reckoning with what that means. We also have being left out of important meetings and having adjustments made to my role as a result of a man not being comfortable with a young Black woman being his boss. The structure was adjusted to allow us to report to the same boss, even though his actual duties still fell under me. Think about what that would feel like for a minute. I want you to exercise your empathy and think about doing years of school, going through college, going through your master's, working hard, potentially working jobs while you're doing that. A lot of us have been in that situation. We know how difficult it is to even start in the professional field, but then to look at something and see your big break, see an opportunity to really shine, to see all your hard work pay off, and then to have that taken away from you because someone is threatened just by your very existence, what you look like and where you are. And not only that, the system in which you're working goes, okay, we'll go ahead and penalize you so that someone else feels more comfortable. That is not a merit-based system. That is not what we talk about here in America as what our workplaces should look like. That's not merit-based at all. That's about comfort. And so I really want to stress that as you're reading these stories, as you're thinking about them, exercise that empathy. What does that feel like? And think about, what kind of stress that would put on you and also how much this hampers someone's career. Now she's maybe a couple years back, trying to earn her next step up, and she's been put off for maybe 5, maybe 10 years. This could throw her career off trajectory for a decade, right? And we really need to understand that the things that we kind of code as small or we sometimes dismiss, those are imperative. We need to start having conversations about those things that we may see as kind of intangible. We really need to start looking at them head on and understanding them at a deeper level.
So some education preliminary findings. Number one, 74% of Black women felt that they needed to work harder to get the same grades as fellow students. Black women, Black families in general, many times when seeking out education, starting from when you are in kindergarten, there are a series of talks that we have within our families. And one of the talks that we have is you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. Again, Bethany was just speaking about meritocracy and the importance of skill meeting opportunity and education. If you are looking at a Black woman or a Black family and seeing that, they have to work twice as hard to get to a place that isn't even as close as their peers. You're expending so much energy, so much mental, emotional energy to just get to a place where you're not even as close as your peers is something that's really emotionally demoralizing again. And for 74% of Black women within this city to to feel that way. We really have to look at the way that our education systems are prepping not only our children, but how our teachers are prepping our own students. Next, 40% of Black women here have felt that they have been given a failing grade that they did not earn. This is really very personal and very difficult to talk about, especially because many of the Black women that we have spoken to are extremely high achieving women, high earning women, women that are, very type A. And when you are working within an education system where you don't have any kind of redress for either a professor or a teacher or a counselor that doesn't necessarily see the greatness of your own potential and will either lower your grade, lessen your grade, or potentially fail you based on things that just may be their own biases. Again, we are stifling the potential within this city. And we are also, again, depressing an entire population of individuals and making them feel as though their intelligence is not there. And we are really making individuals feel as though they are not as intelligent as their counterparts, which absolutely is not true. Next, 56% of individuals were steered into entry-level careers rather than urged to chase their passions. And this typically happens very young, especially for Black women. We know this happens for women in general. Women are generally steered into professions that are seen as either support roles or roles that are seen as feminine. So education, communications, public relations, social work, teaching, but they are not necessarily steered into areas that are seen as a little bit more masculine, like carpentry or engineering, architecture, those types of hard STEM careers, chemistry. And this happens even more, again, for Black women. So let's just say you are a Black woman that is interested in medicine. Instead of being urged to become a nurse practitioner or a doctor, you're being urged to become an STNA or a phlebotomist. Nothing wrong with those careers inherently. If that's the career that you would like to have, please have at it. But if you are an individual that is showing that kind of potential, force those individuals to reach. Make sure that those counselors, those teachers are actually looking at the fullness and the potential of Black women as opposed to where they would like to box them in. The major thing that we're seeing in education for Black women is that Black women are getting more discipline and less support. We've seen so many articles, so much research done within this field that Black women are given higher rates of detention, higher rates of suspension, higher rates of going to alternative schools. And this is leading to, again, an entire subset of a population being undereducated, undersupported, and again, exited from a more competitive workplace environment just because of their educational pursuits. Here's a quote, and this was a really difficult conversation that we had with a Black woman recently. In the college setting, I had one of the nastiest professors. He would not work with me when I needed help to catch up, and he told me that I may as well drop the class because I was going to fail. I was so discouraged that I left that school altogether, and I went to a school for LPNs and got my license that way. Think about the experiences that that woman could have had if she was actually encouraged. If that professor said, "You're going to fail if you don't intervene, let me help you." There's something so simple about trying to help an individual as opposed to leaving them there. So again, exiting women from potential opportunities, we are making, again, an entire underclass that is going to be ill-prepared for a workforce. And we are also sucking the brilliance out of our own city in a way that is really targeted and systemic.
Turning briefly to healthcare, we see this is a particularly painful point when we talk to individuals who have had difficulties in seeking healthcare. And one of the reasons is, when you're looking for medical support, a lot of times, you can be talking about life and death circumstances. You can be talking about, seeing your children in pain, your loved ones in pain. And what we really see is that whenever people go through medical trauma, they really can struggle after the fact to re-engage with the medical system. 35% of respondents here in Cleveland say that their healthcare provider refused to provide any type of treatment. I want to hold here for a second because what we really hear often, and what the statistics even outside of our particular study show, is that healthcare providers refuse to do proper diagnostic treatment at a higher rate for Black individuals and for women, and particularly for Black women. And so what we really see here is the opportunity for disease to advance. We've had conversations with women who, one woman in particular had her mother go to the doctor, and they had spent 6 months trying to get a doctor to listen to them. And by the time they finally had a Black female doctor who ran the diagnostics, they found that she had an advanced state of cancer, and she ended up passing away. These are the stories that we're talking about. People are losing their lives because doctors are not taking them seriously. 40% were told directly that their health issues were not real or were in their head. Imagine going in and being in pain, and some of you may have experienced this. You go in, you have pain, you have concerns, you talk to your doctor, and your doctor says, essentially, you made it up and tells you that's it. You've paid your copay, you've taken time off work to come and talk with this person for your health, and you're essentially told it was a waste of time and a waste of the doctor's time. That can be very, very difficult for individuals, and it can also discourage them from seeking a second opinion because they may believe that doctor. They may say, it was in my head. That's what the doctor told me, and so I never went to go get another checkup or another diagnostic. People are losing their lives this way as well. 32% have been subjected to painful procedures without enough pain management. This is a very common thing that we see. Doctors statistically are less likely to give proper pain management to people of color and to women, and then again, even more so to Black women. And so what we really see here is individuals feeling a pretty significant distrust and concern going into a doctor's office where, we really want people to feel safe, and we want them to be able to talk about their bodies and their health in a very honest way in order to make diagnostic decisions. And what we're really seeing here is that people are terrified of the medical system. We see here, I had an allergic reaction to something still unknown, and the doctor wouldn't even try to figure it out, but did refer me to a specialist. Throughout several visits, to the specialist, she continued to try and say it was bed bugs or bugs in my house until I made her perform a biopsy to see what was causing it. That's when it was narrowed down to an allergic reaction. It was definitely not bugs. And what I want to point out here is that this is layered. We're talking about a Black woman, and the first thing that a doctor decides is that it's bed bugs, something that is highly correlated with poverty and something that is a stereotype for Black women. We don't know anything about this woman's socioeconomic status. And so saying something like that, it has the aura of being something very offensive, of being something very stereotypical. And again, it took longer to get a diagnosis. So this person is sitting there in pain and having a doctor who is essentially denigrating them to their face. This is not the healthcare system that we want. This is not the healthcare system that we think that we have, but this is the healthcare system that we have for Black women. And we really need to start looking honestly at how explicit bias is shaping the conversation in doctors' offices.
So we know that the future is completely and totally diverse. With every single generation, we are bringing in more diverse ideas, more diverse individuals, ethnically diverse, religiously diverse, immigration status, and we need to make sure that we as a city are actually sustaining and supporting this kind of diverse ecosystem. 48% of Generation Z, that's the generation behind Bethany and I, are racially and ethnically diverse. 48%. If we are, again, dismissing the concerns of these ethnically and racially diverse individuals that are coming from different countries, individuals that are coming from different backgrounds, we are dismissing 48% of a workforce, of an education force, of a medical force that, again, is going to only handicap us within the city. 33% of Generation Z are members of the LGBTQ community. Again, if we are not allowing individuals within the workplace, within our healthcare systems, education systems, to come fully as they are, as they are as full human beings, then we are not doing our city justice at all. Here's an example. I do not wake up one morning as a Black person and then wake up the next morning as a woman, and then wake up the next morning as a Nigerian, and wake up the next morning as an Ohioan. I wake up every single morning with these layered identities, and I come to work every single day bringing all of those lenses together, and it influences the way that I look at the world. If we cannot allow these individuals to be able to influence their world through all of the various different lenses, we are poorer for it. Generation Z is significantly more likely to vote with their dollars, and we see this consistently with social media. If an organization, let's just say a business, is not supportive of the ideas or the ideals that Generation Z supports, whether it is more progressive entry into the workplace, whether it is more different types of politics or different ways to enter into political conversations, Gen Z will just exit that conversation. They will not support that organization. In fact, many times they lodge really successful social media campaigns. And I know that that is pretty terrifying for traditional corporate media. I know that is pretty terrifying for traditional organizations. But what we are here to explore and explain is that there are ways to mitigate that. One of them is actually listening to the ideas of and the brilliance of this generation that is coming up. They are the most educated generation, and mainly it's because they have the entire world within their cell phones. They are connected to each other in ways that I could not imagine as a teenager, and they are more adept at understanding the richness and the fullness of this world. But that also means that they are more adept at calling out the things that they see as either hypocritical or hurtful or racist or sexist or homophobic. And we as organizations, we as the leaders in front of them, need to be able to be prepared to listen to them and to be able to guide them through that kind of process. Generation Z is also highly entrepreneurial. If they do not feel that a particular workplace is helpful for them, they will exit that workplace. We know this very keenly. We have a 17-year-old research assistant. She is brilliant and she is very dedicated to doing things her exact way, and we foster that. In fact, it's really inspiring to be able to see such a self-assured young person be able to bring up their own ideas in a way that is firm and researched and educated. What we all want to impress to you, what Enlightened Solutions really wants to bring out into the world, is that the future of innovation and creation will be driven by diverse voices. Diverse voices are not an add-on. We are not something that you sprinkle into different levels of the organization. We are the innovators and the drivers of change. Locations and organizations that foster this kind of diversity, that listen to this kind of diversity, that invest with their dollars, will be better positioned to capitalize on this kind of growth, and they will significantly see success, increased rates, better performance, and again, more satisfied workplaces. So again, if you are interested in being a sustainable organization, you need to invest in a diverse future.
Absolutely. And building on that, we wanted to leave you with a couple of points about what diversity means for organizations and the importance of investing in them. What ChiChi and I talk about a lot is Cleveland and our area has an opportunity like we have not seen in a long time. And that is, we're on the bottom of the list whenever it comes to diversity and inclusion metrics pretty consistently. At the same time, we're a very, very diverse city in the Midwest and well-positioned in that way. However, we have the opportunity to flip that around. We have the opportunity to invest in these issues now, get ahead of the curve that is inevitably coming, and start making this a place that people actually want to come to, because we have solved the diversity problem, the inclusion problem, and we started at home. There are plenty of people here with diverse identities and fantastic ideas, and we need to find ways of facilitating that in new ways, in creative ways. And I think our region will be well positioned in the future to attract talent, to attract innovation, to attract entrepreneurship. Diverse organizations thrive. They tend to make faster decisions they make better decisions at a faster rate. And this is all citable. I can send citations. Companies invested in diversity not only withstand recessions, but increase their market share. In 2008, there was a study, I believe, of over 1,000 organizations. And of those organizations, the ones who had previously invested in diversity and inclusion work, they not only withstood the 2008 recession, they actually gained market share during that recession because they were able to capitalize on opportunities that other firms and organizations were not able to because they did not see them coming and they did not have the connection to those communities in the way that diverse firms had. There's an opportunity right now to get ahead of that curve. It's not going to be slowing down anytime soon. With millennials being now the largest part of the working force and continuing to grow in the next 10 years, being the biggest economic driver, and then having Gen Z add to that mix, the trends are only going to continue this way, and the standards are only going to continue to go up. So thinking about that, this is the time to be investing in this, to get ahead in order to start building that reputation now. The future of innovation talent will be deeply tied to the ability of organizations to foster diverse talent and genius. ChiChi and I often hear organizations say that they felt that they kind of missed the tech boom back right before the 2008 recession, and even moving into the 2010s, we hear a lot from organizations that they wish they had been better positioned for that. What we like to say now is this is the next STEM. The new ideas that are going to be coming out, the new entrepreneurs, the new world leaders, the new senators, the new politicians, they're all going to be centered in diversity. When almost 50% of our next generation is racially and ethnically diverse, and then you just layer additional identities on top of that, you're talking about we are now going to be a workforce of diverse identities. And we really need to think about that and think about that organizationally as we start thinking about how do we compete for talent and how do we, in a regional way, think about how we capitalize and include in a way that's really, really meaningful.
So we know that we have given you a lot of information, and we know that there's no way that we could get into the depth and the breadth of the type of research that we do in this hour that we have spent here. But we are so grateful and we are so thankful that you all decided to choose to spend your lunch break with us. The easiest way to remain connected with us is to sign up for our newsletter at enlightened-solutions.com. That's where we will be publishing our final reports. We will have multiple different reports. You will be able to see it online. We will also be pushing these out on social media and in traditional media as well. If you are interested in chatting with both of us directly, you can always send us an email. We are very responsive that way at hello@enlightened-solutions.com. You can also find us on social media. If you type in Work Enlightened in any social media platform, we will pop up. We are very responsive that way. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, we are there. Also, stay tuned for any kind of additional community trainings and discussions. As you know, Bethany and I enjoy trainings. We enjoy the opportunity to share resources. We are inherently collaborative individuals, and we would love to be able to collaborate with you. So thank you so much on behalf of Enlightened Solutions for joining us. And thank you so much, GCP, for inviting us to have a platform to talk a little bit more about Project Noir and Black women.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bethany and ChiChi, what an amazing presentation and download of information. We have about 15-ish minutes for question and answer, so wanted to give everyone an opportunity to, if you have additional questions, to put them in the chat. And one thing that's coming up, it has come up several times, is what surprised you with the findings? So is there something that is standing out? And I realize that this is preliminary findings, so that may change, but wanted to pose that question to you.
I'll defer to Bethany first, just because I'm at that intersection, so I will defer to you.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times when people are first encountering some of the depths of issues that we're talking about, they're surprised there. I wouldn't say they're surprised for me. At this point, I've talked to enough people at diverse intersections where I understand that our systems are failing at a kind of astonishing rate in the way that they treat people at particular intersections. I will say, I was a little surprised because I do talk a lot with HR professionals, and I really do think as I talk with HR professionals that there is a real drive to get this right. So whenever we heard and we saw that we had a higher rate of individuals being fired for their reports than seeing their harasser fired, well, I wasn't necessarily surprised. I was really disheartened to see that, because what we're really seeing is when we hear from the perspective of HR managers, they're saying, we're getting it right, we're really careful, we're really, really responsive, particularly to issues around race and gender. But what we're seeing is that from the perspective of people at those intersections, HR systems are failing them more often than they are helping them. And what that really tells us is that whenever we're doing individual workplace advocacy, we have to be really measured. When people say they want to go to HR, we have to be realistic about what that's going to look like for them. So I would say that was a point where I kind of went, oh, okay, wow, this is more than I expected.
I think drilling down a little bit more into the healthcare example that we shared in this presentation is the amount of allergies that Black women have and how they are not necessarily taken seriously within healthcare systems is pretty astounding to me. I'm an individual that has various allergies. I've also been very privileged in that sense to always have pretty solid healthcare that was pretty responsive to my needs. But going through some of these survey responses, these interview responses, and learning that Black women really have to advocate very firmly about things that they know innately about their bodies, specifically underneath the idea of allergies, that intersection of allergies and asthma, and also talking about the layer of environmental racism that we see. It was pretty shocking to me about something like that within a city that has, world-class healthcare, world-class doctors, world-class training facilities, for so many Black women to have to really advocate for something that's pretty common. It's allergies. We live in a city that has various different types of trees, and various detergents affect our skin. And just hearing that was pretty shocking to me.
I think that, when you think about it, we do live in the city of Cleveland, and we have this world-class healthcare systems that are, systems that are known, all over the world in terms of the research, the trend setting that they're doing, and the breakthroughs in medicine. Yeah. But when it comes down to taking care of Black bodies from this perspective, especially Black women's bodies, there is some significant gaps and chasms. I have my personal stories as well as others that I've heard, and it can be very challenging to continue to subject yourself and advocate for yourself for things that you just ought to be a part of the package. I mean, you're paying for insurance.
Sure.
You have access to the resources, and you still have these challenges. And so one of the things that strikes me is when you talked about a little bit of this meritocracy. We try, we're taught to you're going to make it. Oh, just do the education, fall in line, assimilate, do everything step by step, and you will be promoted. You will be where you need to be. You'll be equal. And your research is showing that that's not the case. So, what are your thoughts about that? How do we navigate this? How do we get around this expectation of always having to do more and just to get, the basics?
ChiChi and I often talk about this in terms of a lot of organizations and individuals. When we start thinking about these issues, we go right to what can an individual do to take control of their situation, and we really put controls on individual behavior. And ChiChi and I don't do that. We see that people at particular intersections they've tried everything. They've tried everything. They've tried toning back their personality. They've tried leaning into their personality. They've tried learning about negotiating. They've tried learning about their particular job to a better extent. They worry at a higher rate. They are meticulous. And still we see that there's these disparities. And so ChiChi and I really don't focus on changing individual behavior. We focus on changing organizations. And what we're really thinking here is, there is no policy, there's no procedure that we can put in place that is going to mitigate that human element and that human bias. And what we're really saying is these microaggressions, these little things, these little nitpicky things, those are the things that are hamstringing women at a really severe rate in every one of these situations. It's those things that we say like, oh, you've just got to learn to brush it off. You've got to learn to get past it. You've got to figure out a new way. You've got to figure out a new system. Listen, if these issues are so prevalent that there's nowhere else you can go and there's nothing that you can do to change this person's idea of you or any other person's idea of you that they hold inside of themselves, there is nothing you can do to change those systems, and you start to feel trapped. And so for organizations, we really are calling on people to say, this is Northeast Ohio. We want to do something about it. We want to do something now. And we work on facilitating that learning and growth, both for individuals and then at an organizational level, because organizations are the key to changing this, not controlling individual behavior.
You said it brilliantly. I mean, the only thing that I would have added is just adding the intersection that I inhabit as an immigrant to this country, my parents being immigrants, is a phrase that they consistently said as I was growing up, is that they would not be here, they would not be successful, they would not have achieved their American dream without the strides, the struggles, the brilliance, and the intelligence of the Black Americans that came here and have been here before them. They had been standing on the shoulders of giants. That's the only reason why my parents were able to be here and to be able to contribute to the city. And part of the reason why I am consistently giving back and consistently rooting my work within the generations of Black Americans here is because we deserve it. America deserves fully integrating Black Americans within every portion of this system, because again, they are the individuals that have made us better Americans completely. The strides that we have made within the civil rights movement, the strides that we've made within feminism, within the LGBT community, are always rooted within these systems. And now it is our time to really give back, and it is our time to make sure that those individuals' voices, their brilliance, is amplified.
Thank you. Well, welcome, Brian Hall.
Hi, Brian.
Senior Vice President and Executive Director for the Equity and Inclusion Division of Greater Cleveland Partnership. I'm assuming that you have a question that you want to chime in on.
Well, I just wanted to, first of all, thank you, Joanna. We had an example of both technical and human failure, but we also had a great example of a Black woman that could step in and lead. So we didn't have to worry about a thing. So it was perfect for this webinar, and I enjoyed, when I finally could get the sound, I enjoyed hearing everything you had to say. I'll just make a comment, and then Joanna, you could hopefully get a couple more questions in. The one comment throughout your presentation, and Bethany, you just said it again about organizational change. That is the purpose for the Equity and Inclusion Division at the Greater Cleveland Partnership. We were one of the first business organizations to sort of self-regulate and agree to do an assessment, the companies that do our assessment, and take a look inside their organizations of what they're doing well and where they can improve. That's nothing for us to rest our laurels on, because we still see where Cleveland ends up in almost every statistic regarding equity, and it's not pretty. So in spite of the fact that we were one of the first to raise our hand as a business community, we haven't made the changes required. I guess I will throw a question in here about, one would be why Cleveland, number one. racism is everywhere, sexism is everywhere. Black women are treated the way they are, not just in Cleveland, but everywhere. But what is specific about Cleveland that landed us where it did?
Bethany has a great line about our Midwestern sensibilities, so I will leave Cleveland.
All right,
But
and then Joanna, take it home after that.
yeah,
All right.
so I will allow Bethany to chat on that. But definitely Cleveland, as a small big city or a big small city, definitely suffers from a lot of what we have seen across our region, Midwestern, from Michigan, Wisconsin through Pennsylvania, with disinvestment in a lot of these cities. These were the cities that were first historically to industrialize. So a lot of our industry came here, a lot of tech and original tech came here, and once that kind of tech ended up leaving our country, a lot of disinvestment happened. So rooting ourselves in understanding that the Midwest in general is at the bottom of these conversations with diversity and inclusion is one way that we can steer that conversation and understand why this continues to happen. But Cleveland is really keenly positioned within the Midwest for a couple of different reasons.
Right. And talking about Midwestern sensibility, you know, what I say often is that we need to overcome it in a way. I'm a Midwesterner through and through. And I think there is a certain amount of conservatism here, not necessarily politically is what I'm saying. I'm saying that we tend to conserve our resources. We tend to be really careful about what we invest in. And I really want to encourage people to challenge yourself to get out of that poverty mindset. We've had a lot of disinvestment here for the duration of my life. I've seen disinvestment in Cleveland. And so for me, when I'm making decisions, I think a lot of times I'm pulling from that conservative point of view where there's only so much to go around. But the truth is that whenever I started doing this work and whenever we started talking to people at diverse intersections, I remember kind of looking around and going, something is not clicking here, because there is brilliance in this city, absolute brilliance. I can't tell you the number of Black women, particularly, since that's who we're talking to right now, that are absolutely gifted with fantastic abilities and entrepreneurial spirit and ability to go above and beyond, and yet and still continue to be pushed out of systems. Black women are the largest growing entrepreneurial population, and I think a major contributor to that is that they are pushed out of systems at a higher rate and therefore have to make their own lanes. The disconnect that I see here, though, is that once they've started to get into entrepreneurship, they still struggle to get into those main areas of fiscal transactions that we see here in Cleveland. So they're still kept out of that main line and those really larger transactions. We also have an issue of being a small town where, and we hear this complaint a lot, and I tend to second it, is that we go back to the same people over and over and over again. And while we have fantastic minds at the helm of particular areas, it's really time to start thinking outside the box and start reaching into communities and including people that you've never met before. We see a lot of things that we see as problematic. We see people kind of living in and existing in echo chambers here in Cleveland. And what we really want to see is what we're saying might be a little controversial for people. We have people, that ask us a lot of questions. They're a little upset about things we say. But the truth is that we're not going to be making progress. We're not going to make progress as a region if we keep doing what we've been doing, period. We've invested in individualism, we've invested in competition, and we have failed miserably. And what we really need to be thinking about is, in the future, how do we come together as a community? How do we come together as a region? And how do we invest in and connect to the brilliant people living and working in this city that are currently not being capitalized on?
Wow. So final words, and then I'll close us out. It looks like I'm going to ask one more question before I close this out. Brian had a question around, do you think the images of Black people, Black women, which have been portrayed in entertainment, have contributed to lowering society's view? So a quick answer to that, and then I'll close with my follow-up, my last question.
I think that it's more dependent on the media that you are consuming and the media that Western society likes to purport. At every single generation, there have been Black women that are political leaders, writers, academics. There have also been Black women that are homemakers or individuals that are just doing their best every single day. The issue that we see with quote unquote media is that you are now putting the onus and the blame on Black women that may have to just do what they need to do to survive. If you are blaming Black women for being into rap or being very into their appearance or putting themselves out there on reality TV, you're ignoring all of the different Black women that are not doing that. The issue is that you are compounding those effects and making it seem as though it is their fault for a system that they are working in. We can go into an entire presentation about patriarchy and misogynoir, and trust me, I have a word on that. I studied it, but more than that is what we need individuals to do is to broaden their own horizons and stop blaming individuals for their own consumption choices. If you do not like seeing Black women be either overtly sexual or be on reality television or listen to rap music, then stop listening to those Black women and find the other ones that you like to listen to, or stop judging people. It's very simple and it's a very easy concept to have.
I had there's one comment that just in response,
Go
and
ahead.
it says, this is by Tanya Horn. In the music videos, she believes that it has played a role. She was asked by an Asian American man why Black women are so sexualized. And I asked him, where did he get that? And he said, music videos. And I think that that's to your point, ChiChi, that it depends on what you are consuming. That creates your impression of anyone, whether it is any race or gender. So if your consumption is targeted toward a certain genre of entertainment, then that is going to certainly form your worldview around that. And it's going to take intentionality to be able to have a balanced viewpoint. We have 1 minute left, and I want to ask one key piece of information you want people to take away.
I'll defer to Bethany.
Oh, I have to pick. I would say, what I want you to walk away with is it's time. It is time. It is time to try something new. It is time to invest in this. It is time to build something that works for all of us. The future that I envision, is one where people are really able to be their entire self. They're able to be authentic. They're able to be creative. They're able to generate new ideas. Right now, what we're really experiencing here in Cleveland is a stifling of talent rather than a facilitation of it. And that's why we see people, that's why we continue to see the things that we don't want to see. I'm a Cleveland advocate. I am here in Cleveland by choice. I'm from Ohio, but not from Cleveland. I moved to Cleveland because I saw opportunity here. I thought it was a fantastic place, and I was so impressed with the diversity. And I wanted to be in a place with people who had all kinds of ideas and all kinds of backgrounds. And that's why I chose this place. That's why I chose this to make this my home. And what I really see for the future of Cleveland is I see a huge opportunity, but I need people to think about their Midwestern sensibilities the same way that I do, and think about taking a step out of our comfort zone in a real way. So I would say, walking away, just think, it's time. Let's do this.
Thank you so much, Bethany and ChiChi, for sharing so much great information and insight with us today. And thank all of you, the attendees, for participating in today's webinar. We hope you found this webinar engaging and informative. If you have thoughts to share, please let us know in the follow-up survey that will be in the email. Our next Equity and Inclusion webinar will be held on Tuesday, October 27th at 11 a.m. on the topic Thriving Through Times of Uncertainty. To register and for more information about upcoming webinars, please visit gcppartnership.com/events. This concludes today's session. Thank you again. Bye.